everyone for joining us today. We're going to make technology talk as fun as we can. We're going to talk about the cloud. Why is it the right time? How to make sure you do it the right way. But maybe we should start off by what even is it? I can't tell you how many times I talk to distributors and they're like, I'm really embarrassed to say this, but what does it mean? Like, I know there isn't an actual cloud up there. So I'm going to have some experts help walk us through that. So we have Mark Graham, who is the Chief Brand Officer of commonsku. Is that what you are now, Mark?
It is, yes.
Cool. I know, in all seriousness, in conjunction with and prior to developing commonsku, he is also was the owner and founder of Rightsleeve, which is a very highly successful distributorship up in Toronto, which has since been sold. So he's got lots of great experience in building and scaling technology for a business to sell, which is awesome. So you're going to share some of your perspectives today. And Dave is our VP of Supplier Partnerships. So in addition to kind of managing all of the supplier side of commonsku, he also works on the industry integrations. He has hosted a weekly tech talk. He does a lot of diamonds with his hands. You may be familiar. But he definitely has a great background.
Is it up or down? I don't even know, Mark.
I think it's down. Yep.
Depends on the day.
Yeah, so Dave's going to walk us through a little bit from a technical side, what is the cloud? And he is very qualified. Not only is he a technology leader in the industry, he also was a meteorologist. Little unknown fun fact about Dave. So Dave, are these the clouds we're going to be talking about today?
These are absolutely the clouds we're not going to be talking about today. But yes, you're right. 30 years ago, believe it or not, when I was in college, I studied the weather and got a degree in meteorology. And if you want to know how I wound up in this crazy industry from that start, that's a whole nother discussion.
Yeah, that'll be like next week's webinar.
We'll do that another day. So yes, 30 years ago, I studied those kind of clouds. Today, we work in a different kind of cloud. And it's, today, everybody's always asking what the cloud even is. Where is it? Where do I put my data? Or they think they're in the cloud just because they have a log me in account and they can log into their computer at home and get photos of their kid when they're on the road. And I did that too, right? So for a long time, I had a log me in account. If I had files on my home machine and I needed to access them from the office or on the road, I just log into my log me in account and I magically access my files at home. But that's not the cloud, right? So the cloud, and it's not a place. I know one day somebody said they lived right down the street from the Google cloud. Yes, Google has server farms, but that's not the cloud either. The cloud is literally the entire internet. It's shared data, it's backed up data, it's accessible from anywhere. It's not server virtualization either. If you virtualize your servers and make them accessible by your staff, that's not really the cloud either.
So is there like a physical box somewhere though? Is it still in that
it's right
realm?
It's right here. This is the cloud right here. No, it is not a physical box. I mean, it is physical boxes. They're just all over the internet and they're connected together. And, it's really, that's the whole point, right? Is things are everywhere. It's, as I mentioned, it's not server virtualization. Wow. That's a mouthful. It's not riskier. A lot of people are afraid of the cloud because they think it's risky. Yeah. It's like, I don't want to put my photos in the cloud because I might lose them. I'd rather keep them on this hard drive here. And then, when the basement floods, your hard drive gets ruined and you don't have them anymore. So people think it's expensive. They think it's much more expensive to go and move their operations to the cloud versus keeping them hosted locally in their physical building or even in, a remote hosting facility, which is still one location. And when I say it's not top down, the very interesting thing about the migration to the cloud has been that it has really been bottom up instead of top down. You've got all these little departments and companies left and right that find these tools online and are moving to them. And it's been kind of a catch-up job for the senior executives at a lot of companies to catch up with what the departments are doing individually. And it's certainly not a fad. So it's here to stay. Everybody has been moving to the cloud. And in fact, during these crazy COVID times, that migration has really accelerated a lot. So that's what it's not.
It's not these things.
What is it?
What
I already
is it?
said a lot of this. It's internet based. The cloud is essentially the interwebs, right? So it's having multiple servers, multiple locations backed up. the ability to retrieve that data from anywhere, anytime. One of the interesting things was that, when I used to be with Distributor Central way back in the days, we went through that whole migration. We went from hosting our websites, thousands of them, and our data in servers in our physical building, which is a huge risk. Some of you guys might know Jason Noakes, was our president. He must have been 2 weeks into his job there. He walked across the floor and accidentally kicked a cable out of the back of a server, and TradeNet as a company was down for multiple days when that happened. I one time accidentally wrote a query that deleted thousands of records from the database, and it was on a tape drive to back it up, which took 16 hours or something to restore that data. So the cloud is real time, always synchronized, always backed up, accessible from anywhere. There's a variety of versions of it. There's private clouds. Companies have their own private clouds. There's public clouds out there, and then there's hybrids, people that have kind of a combination of both. And, as a ex-meteorologist, I had to throw in some crazy acronyms too. So you've got things that you'll hear people talk about like SaaS, PaaS, and IaaS. So we're talking about software as a service, platform as a service, and infrastructure as a service. And you're probably using bits and pieces of that and you don't even know it. If you're using Gmail, you're using software as a service. You're paying for a cloud-based Gmail account where you can store files and email, and today create slide presentations like this and do everything else. Platform as a service is kind of what we as a company at commonsku, we leverage Amazon Web Services as a platform to build the software that you guys use to run your businesses. Similar to infrastructure as a service too. You can actually, basically host your entire infrastructure out there on the cloud as well.
So my question has always been, I think if anyone was recently, we got to hear Norm Hollinger from Alpha talk about this at a show, maybe, I don't know. The world is going really slow, really fast right now. Maybe it was a year ago, maybe it was 5 years ago. I don't remember. But,
exactly.
He talked about the security breach that they had,
yes.
as I'm sure a lot of you guys on the call today are aware of. And it was very costly, very stressful, right? There was a lot of data loss. And I remember someone had asked him, are you guys in the cloud? And he said, well, a little bit, we were getting there. And someone said, if you had been fully in the cloud, would this have happened? And he said, no. Probably not. So Dave, a lot of people kind of want to harness that server because they can physically hold on to it.
But
from a security perspective, how does the cloud compare?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. It's like I said, I've been with companies that hosted everything inside the building we worked out of. And the next step from that was to take those servers and move them to a server farm, but it was also in Kansas City. We get tornadoes in Kansas City. So if we ever got hit by a tornado, that data is gone. If you're working on a system like Amazon Web Services or, whatever platform you use to build the infrastructure to run your business, it's backed up in real time. Like backups from Amazon are almost instantaneous. It's amazing. So there is never any chance of losing anything. Also, the fact that you never have to actually install all these different software applications on your machines when you're fully cloud-based is great as well.
Yeah, that's true. None of us miss that.
No.
So I guess just like jumping into why, do you feel that this is important?
So I threw this in just as a very simple example of understanding the difference between the way we used to do things and the way we do things now, non-cloud-based versus cloud-based. So if you think about this presentation that we're doing today, imagine that Sam created this PowerPoint presentation, then she emailed it to me and I added my slides and I emailed it to Mark and he added his slides and he emailed it back to Sam, and we go round and round and round and round until we have this final slide deck, versus today where we're using Google Slides in our case, where we're all editing this deck in real time. And at the same time, we can be editing this deck and have all those changes synced up. It's just so much more efficient. Nobody has to email files to each other and risk things getting out of sync. So that's just a very simplistic example of how the cloud works at a micro level. And if we extend that into commonsku world, I'm picking on our good friends over at Soul and Swag, not because they did anything wrong. They actually very awesome people, but imagine them, same thing. You've got a client presentation, and this gets even more complex when you start emailing your suppliers for product information, pricing, pictures, and they email them back to you and you go put them in your slide deck, versus a system such as Soul and Swag is using on commonsku, where Their suppliers are suggesting products in the app. They add them to a presentation. Everybody can see that, edit, comment, and they send that out to a client. Just so much more efficient.
So commonsku is like one big Google Doc for the industry.
That's a very simplistic way of stating it, but yes. Always backed up, real-time collaboration. And, you know, if you kind of back up and you think about the importance from more of a macro level, just the differences in efficiency and productivity are just unreal. You're not losing all that time sending things back and forth or risking losing data. The ability to collaborate in terms of cost and security, the cloud today is extremely cost effective, and the security is much more than you could get if you were running your own servers and having to update all that security. Especially over the last few months, as everybody has seen, the flexibility to work anywhere, anytime. I mean, anywhere I have my laptop or my phone, I can be at work, regardless of where I am. And the ability for your business to continue operating, business continuity and scalability. You know, as Sam mentioned, when Norm talked about what happened at Alpha Broder, you know, if a company is 100% cloud-based and all of a sudden all your employees are sent home, they have their entire infrastructure to work with from wherever they are. And as you've seen in the last few months, a lot of companies have been caught kind of red-handed in the fact that they weren't prepared for all their employees to be working from home. And they had to move very quickly to get software applications in place to allow their employees to work from home. So we've seen a massive move to the cloud over the last 3 months, even, that was escalated by everything we've seen through the COVID-19 crisis.
Yeah, we've definitely seen it here too. I mean, a lot of companies needing a solution and sort of, you know, they like you said in the beginning, they might have scrambled to find some different things all over the place. And then they're like, wait a second, maybe we should make this decision from a big picture perspective.
Yeah.
So I want to kind of bring you, Mark, into the discussion. You've been in the distributor world since you were basically a kid, probably at this point. You've seen technology change a lot. And I think we all know that most of us have adapted to some kind of remote work. I mean, even going way back in time, I had like the first BlackBerry Messenger. I thought that was like amazing. I was like, greatest thing ever. Somebody could send me a message. I couldn't do anything with that. But, you know, when you were, you know, working in Rightsleeve more fully and needed to probably streamline or make things a little bit more efficient, you had vision that I think was years before most people's time to see what the cloud was and where things were headed. So we'd love to hear more about how that came about and kind of get your perspective. But what prompted you to go in that direction long before anyone else? I mean, if you think about what the world looked like at that time, this is what it looked like, this seems like it should be in a museum.
I had a Ryu MP3 player.
I had the Palm Pilot on the bottom right. I really wanted that Mac laptop, but I didn't get it. Obviously, we had the iPod. I mean, you think about how much the world has changed in 10, 12 years, and this looks like it could be 1880. So at you were living in this world, Mark, and you saw that there was something different. So maybe walk us through a little bit about how that came about and what were you trying to solve?
So there were three interesting realities at that time. You take it back to 2005. This is pre-commonsku. This is me running a distributor business. And Rightsleeve had about 3 people at the company at the time. I was the owner, chief salesperson, and had a couple of support staff, which may be familiar to some people that are on the call right now. And the issue were threefold at that time. So number one was communication challenges with the team as we added more people. And, you know, if you're a small distributorship, communication can be largely managed by email and old school practices if you just have a handful of people, particularly if the owner is halfway organized. But as we started to add more people, 4, 5, 6 people, communication barriers were significant. So that was point number one. Point number two is that there was literally a day where we came into the office and the stack of orders that were all paper-based, all put together with bulldog clips, literally fell behind the desk. And when it did that, there were probably about 10 orders that never got invoiced. And we found them maybe 6 months later as we were doing a tidy up of the office.
And you realized, wow, we're really broke.
Yeah, it was amazing. But the thing is that business was great because I was as they say, somewhat organized owner. I was a good salesperson, and I had my hands in every pie. So I almost knew where every order was because we were doing less than $1 million worth of sales. It was a profitable, good business, but I was able to wrap my arms around it with these old school systems. But as they say, that was starting to become a challenge as we A, added more people, and B, as our order count moved up. So these were all good problems to have. And I think the third thing is that the cost of bringing people together and streamlining communication, streamlining orders was available back then, but the cost was out of this world. So we're not even talking cloud technology. We're talking server-based technology that was going to cost a lot of money, was going to take a long time to customize. And for a sub $1 million distributor with 3 or 4 people, that was just not tenable. It wasn't an option. And so the only choice that we had at the time was to either stay at the size we were or look to building our own solution. There wasn't anything in the industry that was focused on the cloud. Everything in the industry at the time was completely old school and expensive and clunky. So there was no way we were going to go with that. And we saw an opportunity to go and build our own solution. Maybe that was a bit of a foolhardy decision, but I was curious about it, and we built our own cloud platform that eventually, that at the time was the precursor to commonsku, which was launched in 2010.
Yeah, it's amazing. When I started in the industry, we were using a software called Ordermaster, and it was DOS-based. I don't look old enough to know how to use a DOS-based program. I mean, I'm going to tell myself I don't look old enough, at least.
Yeah.
So there's been so many changes. So it's amazing that you have this vision. I'm curious, maybe at the end I'll ask you if you had a crystal ball sort of back then of where the world was going. I'd love to know, maybe give you time to think about it. What's going to happen in like 2030 that we can be set up for today? Okay, so chew on that, think of that. But you kind of have sort of 4 considerations that you think distributors really should look at as they're making this decision and they're sort of thinking about making the change. I thought maybe you could just walk us through those a little bit one by one. So these are your 4 steps to evaluating a cloud strategy. And first you say is of vital importance is looking at the client experience. What do you mean by that?
So client experience, quite simply, is how you show up to the end client. Is the end client having a positive experience when they're interacting with your business? Can they order from your business in a streamlined way? Can they communicate with your business in a streamlined way? And I also think, probably most importantly, like, how do you look as a distributor? Do you look modern? Do you look with the times? Or do you look like the kind of business that is difficult to do business with? Today's customer is savvy, they're demanding, their expectations are incredibly high. And the challenging thing in the promotional products industry is there's a lot of competition, there's a lot of options. And for those distributors that are showing up to their clients in an archaic and a not particularly design-focused way, I think are at a major disadvantage today. They certainly were at a disadvantage before, but now with the world accelerating as quickly as it is, that's incredibly important. Think about your own experiences right now with companies that you're working with. If we put our consumer hats on, you want to be working with businesses that make it delightful to work with them. You don't want to have to call Amazon to go get a tracking number. You just simply want to log in and you want to see a tracking ID. That's just one of many examples that I could give. But the way in which you show up to your client is more important now than it ever has been. And that was critical for us when we were making this decision to move to the cloud.
Yeah, I think about when you say that, I also think about the speed. Certainly this COVID crisis and pandemic has made people change their behavior. You're seeing people older than ever before having to adopt technology, learn technology. And so now it's not just young people that want things faster. But if you're waiting on things to be printed and sent and mailed and updated, how do you achieve the level of speed that your consumer wants?
And I think to even give a tangible example that people on the call might identify with, think about if you have ever emailed a PowerPoint deck or a PDF presentation to a client with a bunch of different ideas, and then think about the email exchange that goes back and forth. What's the price on this? Is it cheaper if I get 500? What's my logo look like? Is it vector or is it JPEG? All that stuff. You think about the back and forth. A typical transaction can have 10 or more interactions back and forth. That is not a particularly streamlined client experience. Most end clients aren't in the promotional products business. They just want their 500 coffee cups and they want them quickly. And if they have to go back and forth and they're basically arm wrestling with their distributor to get that information over to them, that's a negative client experience that many others that have embraced client experience have the opportunity to go and take that business from you.
Yeah, that's a good point. So number 2, piecemeal solutions.
So what I mean by this is that I think in 2020, there are a lot of people that will say, I'm already on the cloud. I've got Gmail, I've got Google Sheets, I've got Dropbox, I've got the cloud version of Photoshop and Illustrator, I'm on QuickBooks, I've got ESP, I've got Sage Online, so on and so forth. And I think distributors that have migrated to the cloud in this fashion should certainly be applauded. That's way better than, say, the Order Master solution that you were talking about, Sam, back in the day.
What?
Yeah, I know. But the reality is that in 2020, the challenge with these piecemeal solutions is that many of them don't talk to each other. And so I think what you see with a lot of distributors that feel they've moved to the cloud is they've moved to the cloud in a somewhat inefficient way, because they're using these piecemeal solutions to accomplish a micro part of their business, but they don't talk to each other. So there's a lot of duplication, there's a lot of inefficiency, which if I go back to my 2005 days at Rightsleeve doing under $1 million of sales as a distributor, you know what, that didn't really matter. I didn't really care that I was inefficient because I was able to master all these different systems. But as soon as your headcount starts to move up and you start to grow, then things start to fall down. And so when I think about our experience in building commonsku, we wanted to be able to go and reduce as many of these disparate systems and bring them into one common experience so that we could make it more efficient and reduce the chance for errors.
Yeah, and also let's not discount distraction. You know,
Yep.
it's, if I talk to distributors and this 11 number is legit, in some cases it's higher. And sometimes I'll talk to a distributor, I'll walk them through commonsku and they'll say, oh, well, we use, ESP and we use Excel and we use QuickBooks. I mean, that's really it.
Yep.
And then I'll say, oh, okay, we get going. Where are you storing your art? Oh, okay,
Yep.
we use Dropbox. And where are you doing this? Oh, okay, I guess we do that too. Where are you? Oh, I forgot, we have a Trello board. And before you know it, they don't realize what they're really doing, right? And each time you ask, especially a salesperson, to switch from one thing to the next, you run the risk of distractions and following the wrong rabbit hole. And so this isn't just about collapsing systems having to talk to each other. It's putting things through faster to create that client experience you talked about. People don't want to wait 2 days to get something from you, right?
Yep.
So this is a real number. And I think it'd be good for, as you're thinking about this, if you're listening to this today, part of the exercise here is to really think about, what are you using? Even if you're in the cloud, how many different things are you using in the cloud?
Yeah.
And so that kind of brings us to a term that I use and I took for granted that a lot of people understood it. So maybe Dave, if you just could give a little definition, what does tech stack really mean?
So, I mean, your tech stack is essentially just all of the platforms you use or all the technologies you use. And it's, interestingly enough, the slide you're previously on, when you talk about the Microsoft products and you talk about the Creative Cloud products, like I am a subscriber to Adobe Creative Cloud. I use Photoshop, Illustrator, all of it. But the irony there is that they make it very easy for you to not, I use those applications to save files to my local drive. You know, if I'm editing photos, they're generally not out there in the cloud. So that's an interesting nuance of that. A lot of people, I bet, are using Excel and Microsoft Word and saving those files locally instead of out to their Microsoft OneDrive. So some of those platforms are trying to get you to the cloud, but they're still making it a little too easy to save the files locally versus in the cloud. So, but your tech stack is essentially just everything you use to run your business. And ideally, as Mark said, they're all connected and they're not disparate systems. They're all talking to each other. I know, like when I came to commonsku, you guys said, here's our tech stack. This is what we use for CRM. This is what we use for accounting, and everything was connected in some way, right? So I can still have 10 different applications to run my business, but if they're all disconnected, it was only, I don't want to say half-assed, but you know what I mean. A half-hearted move to the cloud at best.
Yeah, so we can all leave here today having learned this fancy word tech stack, and then hopefully get to know your tech stack. What is it? What's it made of? What do you want it to be? What are the elements of your business that are really important? Do you care about prospecting or lead gen? Do you want more sophisticated financial reporting? Do you want marketing, to technology? What it matters to you, and then build this. It's like being able to build your own custom home. But if the stairs don't lead to the upstairs, and it doesn't really help very much. You're standing at the top of the stairs and you can't get to the bedroom. It's not really convenient, right? So how do you build the home that everything is kind of cohesive, but it's also customized to you and to your business? So the next point, again, on your list of importance, is around community and collaboration. And before you kind of dig into this, because found this, if anyone hasn't seen visualcapitalist.com, it's my favorite site. If you're an infographic junkie like I am, you're going to love this site. And it takes great data and really encapsulates it into cool infographics. But they did a survey last week around remote work. We're all working from home. You can see in my weird upstairs attic sort of thing. And I thought this was super interesting, that of all the things people really hate, look how far and away what they miss is that spontaneous connection and collaboration. I mean, everything else was like paled in comparison to how much people miss that. I know I miss that. We talk about that way. We were a very connected company that way. We would come to the office. Dave and I work remote, but we come to the office once a month, and it was such an important time for us to connect. So given that this is really something we're going to be living in for a while, people working remotely, more flexible schedules, you think about your technology. How can technology help you collaborate and make a connection better? So what did you mean by that? And maybe tell us a little bit about kind of how you thought a commonsku would be able to solve that.
So when I think about my experience with Rightsleeve, again, going back, say 10, 15 years ago, is that one of the things that was a challenge for us before we built the system is that we operated effectively on an island. We had the ability to interact with other people through industry events, but all of that was done in person, and that's great. But we recognized that if we were able to create a platform that allowed us to be connected with peers and industry colleagues, to be able to allow us to collaborate and build community with others that are in the industry, we recognized that was going to be an X factor for us. Now, sure, we all know that as distributors, we all have our own proprietary clients. We have our own proprietary ways of doing things. I'm not suggesting that you share that. What I'm talking about is sharing the things that allow us all to get better and to learn from each other. So that was a huge accelerant for us. And I think the other part of community and collaboration is not only the ability to connect with other people across the industry, but also to connect with the supply chain. And I recognize that our ability to work more efficiently with supply chain partners was again going to be a huge X factor for a small mid-sized distributorship like Rightsleeve, at least as we were in 2005. So the ability to develop and nurture those supplier relationships all within the platform is something that completely changed how it is that we did business, and also, not to mention, a lot more efficient in terms of how it is that we were getting product ideas from our suppliers. So the concept of harnessing cloud technology where everyone else is on this same platform to allow us to run our business in private, but at the same time allow us to open up our business to be able to connect with suppliers and other distributors across the industry, is something that completely changed how it is that we went to market. And without it, I don't think we'd be in business to this day.
Yeah, it's a huge component of what makes us, I think, and makes commonsku super special. One of the screens I have up here is just an internal view of the homepage or the internal news feed. And it was one of the things that I first saw of commonsku when I was applying to work here. And I remember they showed me Rightsleeve's version of this. So this is kind of a fake one that we use in demos, but Rightsleeve's version of this was real. And it was like watching a TV show, of like a reality show of everything that everyone is doing, and the power for an owner. Look, if you were running Rightsleeve now, Mark, you could be in your home, and your 30 reps could be in their homes, and you would have as much of a finger on the pulse of what was going on in the companies if you were all in the same building. And so what incredible foresight, because you never thought there would be a day we would all be stuck at home, not working, right? I mean, who could have ever imagined this craziness? And yet here we are, and there's nothing that is being sacrificed or compromised, because if you're an owner, to be able to see what they're doing and be able to comment, interact, make them feel good, engage is so powerful.
Yeah, no, it's a good point. Never in a million years would I have ever thought that we would be in a global lockdown,
No,
which
but
makes this
thank you for
particular
building
feature.
the tools to make it easier.
Yeah, I know.
So the last one is, you get a little bit more serious, but obviously you just had a very successful exit from Rightsleeve, and it's sort of the dream of all business owners of, we go into business one day to create a legacy, pass it on to our children, or sell it, but you're trying to, at the end of the day, build equity, whether that's for yourself, for your future, for your partners, for investors, whatever it is you're trying to do. And there's lots, we could talk forever about how do you do that. That could be its own webinar, but I think tell me a little bit about how software and the right technology plays into that. And I'll just kind of switch to this slide with some sort of kind of data that I found that's pretty easy to follow. But if you look at this and you see where do businesses sort of move to in different stages, and what creates the best plan for an exit, most of the distributors that I talk to, and you guys correct me if I'm wrong, kind of are living in that level too. It's very owner reliant. If the owner goes away, it's very hard for the rest of the team to function properly. So talk a little bit about what you mean by that and kind of how this will build equity.
So if you're looking at this graph, and we go back to 2005, which is sort of the origin of this discussion right now, Rightsleeve would have been level 2 early. Okay, so very hands-on owner, very sales-oriented owner. Owner knew everything that was happening in the business. And what I wanted as a distributor owner, entrepreneur, is I wanted to be able to create a business that at one day would be able to survive without me. And I recognized that, say in 2005, that was absolutely impossible because I had my fingers in everything. So recognize that building systems and empowering other people through software and technology to allow them to run their sides of the business was going to be an absolutely critical part of that process. And for me personally, I knew that that the value of my distributor business, if I was just seen as an owner salesperson, would be the value of my clients, and there wouldn't really be much value in the business outside of me. And I think you see a lot of that in the promotional products industry now. Is you have a successful salesperson / owner, they get to $500 or $1 million or even higher in sales, and they go and sell, but what they're doing is they're basically creating a job for themselves in another distributor roll-up. And I'm not criticizing that, but for me, that's not what I wanted. I wanted to be able to create a business that I could sell to someone else that would not require my day-to-day involvement. And the only way that can be done is by creating systems and empowering people to do the business that you yourself once did. I know that was initially a little bit weird for me because, like most business owners, entrepreneurs, you're control freaks. And to be quite honest, if you're not a control freak at the beginning, you're probably not going to be successful. But being able to transition where you could pass those tasks off and be able to trust the systems and the technology and the software to do its job, that was tough at first, but I can tell you that it was really rewarding to be able to see other people do their work, facilitated by the software that really helped Rightsleeve build up this great amount of equity that made it a little bit easier to sell it at the end of the day.
And you're giving the team a better experience as well. I mean, nobody wants to have to go to their owner every 5 minutes with a question or how do I do this? And I can't tell you how many owners I talk to who say, it's hard to grow because I can't imagine hiring someone and explaining this craziness that we do here.
Yeah.
And so if you don't have that craziness, think about how fast you could grow and how you can add more people to the team that are revenue growth, where you're going to get that exit much more profitable for you.
One little quick add-on story. I think you're touching on your ability as an owner to recruit salespeople, and that's a really important part of how a distributor grows these days, is the ability to attract great sales talent. I remember this was maybe around 2008, 2009. We had brought someone else that had come from another distributor in our local market, and I remember when she was being brought on from a training perspective, she was like, I can't believe the system that you use. This was pre-commonsku. This was the Rightsleeve cloud system that we had built. I've never been able to be as efficient as this because the systems I came from before were non-existent. And that was really fantastic because it, A, demonstrated my ability to hire great sales talent because we differentiated ourselves based on our cloud strategy. And number two, once that person came in, she was very, very successful because not only was she a great salesperson, but she was aided by great software and a great
she could hit the
cloud
ground
experience.
running like
Yep.
right away, right? And there's talent available everywhere. Here I'm in Orlando and Dave's in Kansas City, and if you didn't have technology like this, you would be limited to hiring only who you could hire in your local market because you want to watch over them and see them. And so talent doesn't know geography, and so to grow your business to get the best talent you can, you want to spread your wings and be able to work from anywhere and still feel connected. So it's from a recruiting standpoint, it's going to absolutely help get to that exit that hopefully you want. So these are sort of the four things that we kind of covered today. And just kind of wrapping it up, I would say in my experience working with hundreds and hundreds of distributors who get to this point where they know they need to make a change. They know it. They've known it for a really long time, like being in a bad relationship or, whatever those things are that eat away at us and we know we need to do it. It's crossing that over that thing. And so I think it does come down to fear. At first it's like, I'm afraid. And so Dave kind of talked about the cloud in the beginning is that you have this physical box and then I just hold on to this box, everything will be okay. And they get it that, it's archaic, but it gives them comfort. So one is you have to really think through what are you truly afraid of? And then once you kind of understand that, you can work to fix those things. So I would say the best thing you can do is truly sit down and look at what your processes are now. And that's the painful hard look where you get your whole team together, because a lot of times owners think they know their processes and their team will say, no, don't you know we send that to Susie for approval, and then Mike has to look at it again, and then we have to put it in that folder for 2 days before it goes back to accounting, and the owner's like, why are we doing that? So get the team together, do it by Zoom, bring lunch for everyone, and have everybody truly whiteboard what is the process. And when you find something that doesn't make sense, ask them why. Why do we do this? Because the answer will be really surprising. It was usually to fix one order that went wrong one time. And so if you're still doing that one thing, can technology fix that for you? Is it even necessary to do it? But once you have all that documented, you have a really good idea of what your processes are. And then you can think, what do you want it to be? What would be the best thing you could do? And so then you start to kind of figure out what your tech stack should be. And lastly, we've been given this gift of time, for better or for worse. Things are at a different pace. Months go on forever. So take advantage of it and use this time, spend a few days to identify your processes, examine what your tech stack is, researching what the potential is. If that leads you to commonsku, that's great. As far as Mark's sort of points, that really came from what he wanted to build within the platform. So we're really, really proud of the way that we create an elevated experience. Everything we do from a development standpoint, we think, what is this going to look like to the end buyer? If your end buyer is happy with you, you are going to be happy with us. So that is a big part of what we believe in. The sense of community, if you've been part of our events virtually or in person, not only the community within other commonskewers, the community with the suppliers, and then the community within your own company. You are now a community. You're not in the same office. You have to build community and streamlining your workflow every way you can, getting those pieces to talk to each other so that you can go downstairs and give your kids lunch and the business isn't going to be on fire. You can take a couple of days off and everything is going to function the way that it should. So I'm happy to do a walkthrough for you or to give you a trial of things so you can kind of test and play things out. But just wanted to thank you guys for taking some time out of your day and sharing your experience with us. Any final thoughts? Maybe Mark, give you a chance to think about the question I asked you at the beginning. If you could shake your crystal ball, what do you do with a crystal ball? Do you shake it? That's a magic 8 ball. Rub your crystal ball.
Or it could be like a magic snow globe. Maybe if I had one.
Globe, and it's 2030. What are we building? What do we see as the future that we're investing in today, even if people think we're crazy?
So I maybe give you maybe a slightly different dimension on that answer. I think what's happened in the last 3 to 4 months is that our technology expectations have accelerated to 2030. So we as a software company are sitting here in 2020 and our roadmap has accelerated exponentially. And that is incredibly exhilarating. I think Samantha used a point on the previous slide, and it's also incredibly stressful, but hey, we're up for the challenge. But you think about how much client expectations have changed in the last 3 to 4 months. I'm not just talking PPE, but I'm talking about the shift to kitting projects, the shift to how it is that you engage customers at their homes when they at one point were in their offices. And those are just two examples. And I think that, our ability to keep up with that is really exciting. And I think that when we emerge from this crisis, I think we're going to see the distributors that have embraced technology, that have adapted to these new realities, are going to be the true winners. And I think it's accelerated at a pace that none of us have seen or would have experienced or would have predicted, I should say.
It's not for the weak-hearted, but it's been exciting to see it.
Listen, our industry is incredibly resilient. It's incredibly robust. And the benefit the privilege that we've seen over the last several months is over 500 distributors on the commonsku platform that have adapted. Many are growing their business, are growing their margins, are moving into different areas that I don't think any of them would have ever seen. And that's a testament to the people that are in our industry, and we're privileged to be working with many of them. So we couldn't be more excited and bullish about the future.
Well, with that, thank you all, and thank everyone. I know we kind of ran over time, so if you have questions, please go ahead and send those to me. We'll follow up with you as well to make kind of getting trial started if that's what interests you easier. But we look forward to continuing the conversation and being part of the future of work. Thank you, Dave. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you, Sam.
Thanks.
Take care, everyone.
Guys. Bye.
Bye.